toward Natchitoches, so that's your circulation. But just kind of a programming note, I know we're about to start first at 4, which is our South Arkansas newscast, and for our South Arkansas viewers expecting to see South Arkansas news, unfortunately North Louisiana severe weather has trumped that for this afternoon. We'll obviously hopefully we have Scarlet Gully on standby if we can get there, if we can get rid of these tornado warnings. But Walker, I just wanted to let you take a breath for a second because you've been kind of talking for a while there, but obviously that circulation starting to pick back up just to the northwest of Clarence.
Right. The National Weather Service out of Shreveport has decided to continue this tornado warning. You're seeing some of that box trimmed off. That's pretty typical as well. Depending on how fast the storm is moving, that usually can decide how big that tornado warning box is. And so as it moves through the tornado warning box, they'll try to trim things off and make sure everybody that's still in threat, so to speak, for the possible tornado, make sure that they're actually there. And as of this point, as mentioned, you see this little corner here that I'm pointing out? This is far northwestern Wynn Parish. So you can kind of get an idea of where we are just now. Has not yet entered officially the Arklamis, so to speak, but nonetheless, it's still just right adjacent to it. Continues in Natchitoches Parish. And I know we were talking about the reds and the greens. Don't worry too much about what you're seeing here in the far northwestern part of the box. There is a large thunderstorm here, but the possible tornado, the circulation that is of concern, a little bit further to the southwest. And
I was about to say, is that other circulation just kind of crossing over into the warning there from the previous storm?
I don't actually believe so. I believe this circulation has stayed here for some time. The other tornado warning, it didn't really have much of anything for structure, Jared, and so it just fell apart rather quickly.
It's also probably getting contaminated by a lot of the rain and things like that that we've had from the north. But obviously that circulation that you're pointing out to the southwest of Galdana, which is closer to our viewing area, again we're looking at something that's technically outside of the NBC 10 Fox 14 viewing area, but the technical warning that includes southern Bienville and northwestern Wynn, those are our viewing areas. So again, want to give those folks advance notice. You're getting a good half-hour advance notice. Walker's been on the air for 10-15 minutes already, and now, like I said, you need to be in your safe place, interior portion of your home, away from windows and doors. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Walker, like I said, you've got it pinpointed out there with the hand tracker. I'll just let you keep on going.
Yeah, no worries there. And again, it's not too surprising to see some of these circulations spin up rather quickly or fall apart quickly. It's just the nature of how things work. So from time to time, maybe you see something that looks like a pretty strong circulation. Maybe it falls apart rather quickly as well. And Jared, I don't know if there's a tornado possible tag with the adjacent severe thunderstorm warning. There's another circulation just north of Pleasant Hill there, and that would still be around southwest of Bienville Parish. That could be another possible tornado that forms. Again, that's not too surprising. That's just the general nature of things. We've been looking at the velocity for quite some time now. We're going to go back over to reflectivity, something you're used to seeing. And again, the reds and the greens from one product to another mean different things. So on this map, what you're seeing, some of the maroons, some of the darker oranges, that's going to be the really heavy rainfall. Maybe even some borderline hail is going to be possible with some of these storms as well. Not necessarily this one in particular, but that's going to be a general trend through the rest of the evening. The potential to see some hail with these storms, especially if they have some pretty substantial rotation. But nonetheless, some of the lighter greens that you're seeing, that's going to be light rainfall. So the light green is light rainfall. The dark red is going to be heavy rainfall. Everything else just somewhere in between. This tornado warning will continue until about 4:30. The time now only 4:03. So as long as we have an active tornado warning, not a severe thunderstorm warning, an active tornado warning, that will prompt us to continue on the air and continue cutting into programming. So in the event this severe thunderstorm warning continues and the tornado warning is canceled, obviously we're going to hop off the air and hop back on if necessary. So just kind of give folks a note if they're waiting for something in particular in programming.
There's really not a whole lot going on right now to be in the middle of the 4 o'clock hour. We've got First at 4, which is a newscast on NBC, and then, like I said, Louisiana Living would usually be coming on at 4:30, but we now have that today. So, like I said, we're in an ideal spot to be just kind of giving advance notice, and that's kind of what we're doing. There is that one tornado warning, and that is a very dangerous storm. Like I said, I don't want to take away from that. I want to acknowledge the fact that it is outside of our viewing area moving in, and then we have other like embedded circulations within that storm as well. So yeah, like I said, good point, Walker, and just want folks to know why we're on the air covering a storm that's outside of our viewing area by technicality.
And if I'm being completely honest, we weren't expecting thunderstorms to quote-unquote get going into the area, start in our area. As of this point, I was expecting them to get going right along eastern Texas, along the state line, and then move into the area. And so that's why we're going ahead and staying on the air, even though it's technically not in our area. Obviously, the tornado warning is there, but we are expecting the severe potential to move into the area, not just start out of nowhere, if that makes a little bit more sense. And I'm going to go ahead and circle that rotation again. It's to the northeast of Camp Ty, north and west, or directly north of Clarence, and still southwest of Goldana. It's also still southwest of the Wind Parish line here. You can see it. That's where I'm running my fingers along as of right now. And very heavy rainfall likely continuing there.
Still got little brief circulations kind of spinning up within that whole cluster of cells too. So just for folks that are following along with Walker on the radar there, just be mindful. There's other stuff going on that may be producing some gusty winds within all that heavy rain,
right,
and all those types of things as well.
And so the gusty wind factor is certainly one that we're going to have to take into account, because the tornadoes aren't the only threat that we have today. The main concerns would be damaging wind gusts and quick spin-up tornadoes as well. We're not really expecting most of the storms to stay relatively isolated. It's going to be fairly messy through the rest of the evening, so likely seeing some decent clusters of storms, and so we're not necessarily expecting anything clear-cut. It's going to continue to look fairly messy, and that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but I will make at least one note. If it stays rather messy, one thunderstorm can often interrupt another thunderstorm going, so if it stays a little bit more messy, that could eventually disrupt some circulations that are trying to otherwise hold themselves together. So that's just another good point to make, that not necessarily a good thing, but not necessarily a bad thing either.
And as Walker, and actually, if we can pop me up on camera, just let Walker kind of give his arms a break for just a second. Again, just kind of reset things 6 after 4 on this Monday, the 2nd day of January. Again, Walker and I joining you from the Weather Center. Walker's been on since about 3:40 as the first tornado warning popped up that included our area. Again, a reminder that a tornado watch is in effect for about the northwestern sections of the Arklamas until 9 o'clock tonight. We've actually added additional areas into that tornado watch, namely in our area it was Bienville Parish, so it's kind of a local addition, if you will, to the already existing tornado watch. We had 2 storms, the one on the far left-hand side of the screen, which still has some of those reds and greens together, and in fact I'm going to go ahead and change to a different radar mode here, just so you can see what we're more typically used to seeing in our normal radar reflectivity. So this flashing red box, obviously our tornado warning, and again, northwestern sections of Wind Parish and southern sections of Bienville Parish are in the warning, but the storm itself is not in those areas yet. Still moving through northern sections of Natchitoches Parish, now east of Highway 71 and well northeast of I-49, now north of the Clarence areas, moving to the northeast, and has started to speed up a little bit. I'm going to check the forward speed on that again, but earlier these storms were generally running at about 30 to 35 miles per hour. Right now moving northeast at 40 miles per hour. So it has sped up just a little bit, perhaps with a little bit more organization. And I'm going to kind of ooze over here to the far side of the screen as I control this computer, and just looking at this storm itself as it continues to stay rather organized, moving now out of, or moving north into northern sections of Natchitoches Parish, and will eventually be moving into far northwestern sections of Wind Parish. So you can see the Goldana community. I know it's tough to see here, and in fact, if you want to go ahead and take this full, Dalvin, we can kind of take a closer look at what we're seeing here on the screen, and I'll go ahead and circle some things around with you. But again, this is in a relatively rural section of northern Natchitoches Parish at this point, and wanted to zoom in and see what kind of roads we have. Here's the Creston community. Here's the Placid Oil Road. And again, these are very, very rural sections of Natchitoches Parish, and this is where we're talking about in the Coldwater community over here on the far right-hand side of your screen. Gum Springs Road, which we have talked about oh so much in so many severe weather events that have happened in the Arklamas. It seems like every time we have a tornado warning, we're talking about Gum Springs Road in Wind Parish. But again, again, that's the circled area that we have right now that is where Walker's been kind of honed in since this one particular tornado warning kind of took off. Was part of a severe thunderstorm warning at first. So again, just want folks to be in their safe place, interior portion of your home, away from windows and doors. Put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. As far as what we can expect for the rest of the evening, and I'll let Walker expand on this in just a second, as we'll go back to the wall in just a second. But to expand on what we can expect for the rest of the evening, it is a very complex forecast. We have these early storms that are producing some potential tornadoes, some strong rotation, some very heavy rainfall, but how the environment kind of reacts and whether it can reload for an eventual frontal passage and a new disturbance that'll move through later this evening, that's a big question mark. It could turn into numerous more tornado warnings needed through the rest of the evening, or this may be it in terms of severe weather. We just, again, so much low confidence aspects of the forecast. Let's send it back over to Walker on the wall again, who's continuing to keep an eye on this one storm as it evolves and moves through and moves toward the Arklamis.
Right, Jared, and that's a great point overall, is because depending on how much moisture that these storms use, the energy that they use, because similar to a fire, you need some type of fuel for that fire to continue, and so it's eating a lot of the ingredients that the storm is running into. So depending on if we can reload those ingredients ahead of the rest of the frontal passage late tonight, early tomorrow morning, and even through the early mid-morning hours tomorrow, that's going to determine what we see in terms of severe potential, but overall just in terms of thunderstorm potential as well. Now, Jared, I'm noticing another circulation on the north side of that potentially tightening up just a little bit.
Yep.
And it does look to be as part of the same storm, but nonetheless a very messy scenario. I wouldn't be surprised to see another tornado warning potentially pop up there.
Yeah, there's a little bit of rotation on our radar, but it's kind of in no man's land there. It's kind of a tough thing to see.
I agree completely, but nonetheless, folks in that southwestern portion of Bienville Parish, regardless of what this circulation may or may not be doing, you're still under a tornado warning. And even if you're under a severe thunderstorm warning, just for the rest of today, if you're under a severe thunderstorm warning, there's going to be likely some rotation possible. So go ahead and treat it like a tornado warning and make sure you get into your safe place and act your severe weather action plan, and make sure you put as much distance in between you and the outside as possible. And that's going to include you and the rest of your family. So get all your family members, head to the upstairs bathroom, basement, something of the sort. And Jared, we got another tornado warning. That circulation spinning back up. It's likely going to carry all the way to just south of Ruston and south of Arcadia and south of the I-20 region. That looks to be the other circulation that we're worried. So I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit closer to this tornado warning, Jared, that's in southeastern Bienville Parish, just east of the Lucky community.
While you get to that, let me read off what we have. New tornado warning that's been issued. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado 11 miles west of Jonesboro, moving northeast at 30 miles per hour. So again, that's that new circulation that's just been kind of, for lack of a better term, festering up there to the northern edge of this storm. And maybe this cell kind of splitting at this point and producing two different possible tornadoes.
Right, and so earlier with this same storm, it was fairly broad, and so what happens is, even though it's a broad rotation, it decides to spin up a little bit. Maybe it finds a little bit more energy to use, and so it's not surprising to see it sort of try to tighten up a little bit. And again, what we're looking at is velocity. The radar is able to pick up not just wind speed, but wind direction. And so the green is the winds moving towards the radar, the reds are moving away from the radar. So again, that base circulation. And so for folks just east of Lucky, if you know anybody within this area, go ahead and give them a call. Maybe they don't know, maybe they don't have those severe weather alerts turned on, and that's just a brief reminder. You need to have a way of receiving severe weather alerts through the rest of this evening, even early tomorrow morning. And I don't know if Jared wants to get some road names here in just a second. I'm going to take another broad look to see just how far it expands at this point. This other circulation, the tornado warning that we originally were jumping on the air for, or continuing staying on the air for, it's still just to the southwest of Bienville Parish and just west of the Wind Parish region, so still technically not in our area just yet. But this tornado warning is going to carry all the way through Bienville, up over to just south of Ruston, and barely gets into southern Lincoln Parish, and it does not include the I-20 corridor just yet. And what I'm going to do, we're looking at velocity. We're going to head back over towards reflectivity, something that you're likely a little bit used to. And so this giant thunderstorm right here that's going, this potential circulation, this little inflow notch that you see just here, that's where that potential circulation would be. And so what Jared was saying, maybe this storm just trying to split itself apart, so it's really just two thunderstorms that's starting to look like one almost. And that second circulation is going to be a little bit further southwest.
Yeah, it's near the Highway 4 area, Friendship and New Friendship communities, the English and the Cox Crossing communities. This does not include Jonesboro Hodge. I know that the warning status message called out Jonesboro, but the warning itself technically doesn't include you folks. You can see the Carolina community, Shady, and the Shady Grove Road community. Again, these are all areas that seem so familiar because we talk about them so much. But in fact, I'll go ahead and join you on the big monitor wall for just a second so we can take a better look at what we've been looking at, and Walker's been kind of looking at it as well. So I'm going to let Walker kind of zoom in and take a closer look in just a second at the southernmost edge of that storm. This is the current new tornado warning, and again, the Friendship community, I know it doesn't look like much here on screen in terms of the reds and greens together, but trust me, there's rotation there, and it's been, as we mentioned, kind of festering. Here's the Pleasant Hill Church Road area, and again, I'm just looking at some of the communities. Here's Highway 4, as I mentioned, that just kind of winds right through the middle of the screen into the Lucky community as well. So again, that's your new tornado warning that goes until 4:45, so about another half hour or so on this particular storm on the northern edge. Now we'll go ahead and send it back over to Walker, who can take a look at the southern edge of that storm and then can move back up to the northern edge as well with hand tracker and can take a closer look at the storm in its entirety. Walker?
Thank you very much, Jared. And as of now, again, we're expecting two different tornado warnings here. That's what we're looking at, two different separate circulations. So I'm going to focus on the one that's a little bit further south now. It's still southwest of our area, but I'm going to get another close look. And it looks to be holding itself a little bit better together in terms of rotation than the other one just north of here, still just west of Goldana. But nonetheless, Goldana folks, go ahead and make sure you're in your safe place if you're not already. You should already be there. Same with folks over near the Creston community. We did get another continued tornado warning here.
Yeah, that's, again, that storm 18 miles west of Winfield, moving northeast at 40. So, again, that tornado warning remains in effect. Also, would not be surprised that if we don't add more areas to the tornado watch soon, just considering some of the areas that are getting included in some of these warnings, probably going to have some new counties and parishes added to the tornado watch soon.
Because as of now, I do only believe that the tornado watch has only been continued for Claiborne Parish, so that's going to be a little bit further northwest of here, and a few different counties in South Arkansas. That includes Union, Columbia, and I believe potentially Washita County as well. I'm not quite sure on that. It's going to be
you're right.
Far southwestern Arkansas, just off the top of my head. And we're going to focus on this other circulation that's in Bienville Parish. It's still rotating very clearly, so some of the brighter greens you're not noticing as much red, but similar to red, it's almost like a gray is like the middle ground between green and the red. So nonetheless, there's still some type of circulation ongoing here. You're seeing New Friendship in State Route 4 near the Cox Crossing, and it's continuing to move to the northeast here. We don't have a severe thunderstorm warning included with it. Bienville is not included in that warning, just to the east of there, but this circulation is wandering to the west just a little bit, so don't be too surprised if you see another warning. It's not exactly lined up with this one. Maybe it's moved a little bit further west, a little bit to the east. It's not an exact science, and the exact motion of some of these storms and the potential tornado is not going to be exact either. It's not like it's going to follow a straight line path. It's going to have wobbles and turns, and so potentially even having some very erratic motions.
And that's why the boxes get wide, these polygons get wider with time, is you hone in on that small area where you know that there's a possible tornado, and then as it wobbles out with time, either north or east or whatever, that's why those boxes tend to widen out, give you a little bit more margin of error. On that note, Walker, new tornado watch, it's not a new tornado watch, it's an extension of the already existing tornado watch, but Caldwell, Grant, Jackson, LaSalle, Lincoln, Union, and and wind parishes now all included in that tornado watch until 9. So if you're getting an alert or a buzz on your phone, or you get one shortly and you live in those parishes, that's why you are now under the already existing tornado watch till 9 p.m.
And for folks near Jonesboro Hodge, what you're noticing is you're just east of that warning, and the circulation actually on the west side of that warning as well. So you're not included, you're on standby. Just obviously take note. If you're starting to hear some rainfall, don't get too worried there. Don't let that storm anxiety build. And that's going to be a key for a lot of folks. I know a lot of people around the area have storm anxiety. Don't let it affect you too much. Just make sure you have an action plan and act accordingly, because the best situations are going to be where you stay calm and you just focus on the task at hand. So we still have two different...
I think that leading edge one's probably a little bit stronger than the one to the southwest at this point, Walker.
Yeah, I would agree with you too. It does look to be potentially starting to broaden out just a little bit more as well. And even if you're not seeing a lot of the greens there, or the reds, but you're noticing plenty of brightly colored greens. And so we're still around the Cox Crossing, New Friendship area. A lot of these storms can speed up or slow down, so even though we might say, oh, it might be moving about 40 miles an hour, 35 to the northeast, it could potentially slow down and then speed back up again. And it's always just going to be as a matter of time, as what's actually happening right this second, and not necessarily what's been happening.
And the kind of downside to a lot of this is as we go through the rest of the evening and you see these 2 tornado warnings and the 2 flashing red boxes on the screen and all that kind of stuff, the downside to it is this may not be the end of the severe weather threat. In general, we could be looking at the possibility of running into severe weather through the rest of the evening and overnight hours. Again, it's just how the environment's going to react to what we see and how it responds to what we're seeing currently with a lot of these storms, Walker.
Right, and so it's just going to depend on how
stay aware. Stay aware, I guess, is probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah, I made a post earlier on social media, and it was a pretty broad post if I'm being completely honest, but I said we're likely expecting storm coverage and storm just in general to increase through the next 12 to 24 hours. And I know that's a very broad time frame, but given the fact that what's causing the severe weather is a cold front, that cold front does look to take its sweet time moving through the area overnight tonight, and that's why that severe weather threat is a little bit more prolonged. And I would say folks that are dealing with it on the west side, you'll likely see it start to clear first, but that's not going to happen for at least another 12 hours or so until maybe early tomorrow morning. But for folks along the Mississippi Valley, you haven't seen much for rainfall yet today. You likely won't really see much over the next few hours, but your severe weather threat's likely going to continue until sometime on Tuesday. So it's kind of split the area almost. And while I mentioned that, I just want to go ahead and try to get another circulation. I'm sure we'll get an updated radar image any second.
Yeah, and you may want to switch over to our radar and see what we have going as this thing starts moving a little bit closer to 167. Again, there's your new radar image that just as soon as you switched off our radar, or switched, and you can still see it there, the reds and the greens combined. We're in a radar mode right now that has a little bit more range, but picks up slightly weaker wind returns. But you can see that well within that warning polygon to the east of the Bienville community, moving northeast.
And so depending on which radar mode you're looking at, the circulation might move around just a little bit, because again, each radar you have to treat like a different person. It's looking at the storm in a different way and from a different angle, and so changing from one radar to another can kind of give you a better look of how the storm looks from one location. So for instance, the live storm tracker Doppler radar is going to be northeast of here. Shreveport's is going to be northwest. So depending on which way we're looking at it, it's going to look slightly different, but whatever gives us the best vantage point, that's what we're looking at. Whatever gives us the best information at hand. And so we're getting another swipe here. Again, we're looking at live storm tracker Doppler radar, and that obvious rotation is still holding itself together. Going to get a little bit closer once again, and then I'll take another look at the storm just southwest of us and near the Liberty Hill area. So, and again, if you know anybody within this area, make sure that you call them, give them a safe place. Thankfully, we're not in the middle of the night, and so people are at least up and likely can hear the severe weather alerts that they potentially get on their phone, but go ahead and give them a call regardless anyway, and that's going to be a good status quo for the rest of tonight. Make sure you have a way of receiving severe weather alerts, because there is a strong chance maybe you drift off to bed around 1 or 2 a.m. if you stay up with us, and then potentially need to get wakened up back again early tomorrow morning, depending on the progress of that front. Because if I'm being completely honest, a lot of this scattered coverage will continue for a good part of the evening. Maybe we see a little bit of a lull late tonight, and then the storms are going to pick back up early with the rest of that cold front. The latest I was looking at some stuff, potentially seeing it continue around 5 or 6 a.m., although it does look to stay a little bit more isolated potentially, but that's all up in the air as of this point. We're going to have to take things as we get them. Just got another scan, and it's very obvious as of this point. Very glad that we switched over to this, back to our radar. It's pretty obvious where that potential tornado is as of this point. Going to take another step back, though. And for folks near the Mount Olive region, it's just to the west of you. You are included in that tornado warning, so you folks need to make sure that you're in your safe place. And I did mention this just a few minutes ago, but I want to go ahead and mention it once again. If you're within a mobile home, that is not going to be your optimum safe place. You need to have another alternative plan. So maybe head into town, something of the sort, find a better structured building, and then use that as your safe place as well.
Your other one's starting to wrap back up again, Walker. The one that's moving now into northwestern sections of Wynn Parish. Fort Polk's radar picks it up very well. Our radar is kind of in no man's land in terms of trying to see it because it's kind of clouded between rain and all that stuff. But again, that circulation near Galdana moving into northwestern sections of Wynn Parish. Actually, I'm on Shreveport's radar, really starting to wrap back up pretty quickly. So again, heed the warnings, especially on a day like today where the storms get a little bit weaker and they kind of fluctuate in their overall intensities. Heed the warnings. If you're under one, make sure that you stay in your safe place. A lot of folks are just now getting the new tornado watch on their phones. A lot of those push alerts are happening right now.
And so what I just circled does look to be a pretty strong rotation between this storm that we've been monitoring. Did look a little bit broad from the southern view, but again, we changed back over to Shreveport's radar. It has a better vantage point. It is just now crossing over into extreme western Wynn Parish. So I know this is obviously a pretty rural area, especially just north of Galdana, but nonetheless, if you know somebody in there, you need to make sure you call them and let them know and make sure you're in your safe place. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see another tornado warning continued or issued here pretty soon. It is venturing towards the end of its little box here that it was originally given. And again, this tornado warning is expected to go till 4:30. If we see another one, it's obviously going to move past 4:30 from that point as well. It's still within a severe thunderstorm warning also.
Yeah, still two areas of rotation north of Galdana, another one that like I said, that Liberty Hill area. Also going through a part of this, at least, is through the Kisatchie National Forest. So again, a lot of heavily wooded areas. Some areas are a little bit more populated than others, Walker. So again, I know you just mentioned that, but you can see the areas of circulation still just kind of spinning themselves to the northeast.
And so we've been looking at velocity here for just a minute. I want to take a look at some of the storm structure. And so we're going to head back over to regular reflectivity, something you're used to seeing on the radar. And there's potentially an embedded rotation in a lot of this red here, and that's what we're looking at and monitoring. But this is the structure that I'm looking at as well. You can almost see where this little red starts to bend out and some of the yellows going on there. That's going to be where that potential circulation is going to be, and that's just based on structure, not even looking at some of the winds that we were noticing as well. So if I circle that, I'm going to circle this little image here.
Travel also highly discouraged on 167 north of Alexandria now. If you're on 167 from Winfield going toward Ruston, you want to stop and wait for these storms to pass. It may take a while. You may want to call and say, hey, I'm going to be a minute, because again, as these storms move through, they're moving through relatively slowly, but you're not going to want to be on 167 headed north toward Ruston when these storms start crossing the highway here in the next hour to hour and a half.
And so now that this storm is just now in the Wynn Parish region, I was just trying to point out rather quickly that you can really see, no matter what vantage point you're looking at, the reds and the greens starting to spin up there. And when you head over to the reflectivity, you can clearly see the structure of where some of the winds would be moving into that storm is still there. So while I mentioned that, back up to this other storm to the north and west. And as mentioned, it does not actively include Jonesboro Hodge. It's just to the west of there, but that circulation is still somewhat there. We're going to head over to live storm tracker Doppler radar back to and see what we can see from our vantage point.
It just kind of comes and goes. Not long enough to cancel a warning and reissue a new one. And that's the other problem with days like today, is we sit on air and talk about these storms and go, okay, well, this one's kind of weakened a little bit. But by the time that we would normally jump off the air, it's strengthened back all over again. So it's kind of like, what's the point if these storms are just going to kind of keep breathing in and out like they've been doing?
Right, so it's almost like a wave. You just kind of have to
Right.
ride it out until it comes to a stop, or if it keeps going or not, and that's just the best way to put it. It's going to be almost like ups and downs, waves, if you will. And so seeing something strengthen back up or spin down pretty quickly is going to be another status quo, and it's yet again a severe weather threat that we've seen time and time again here across the arc limits. We've already dealt with 2 other severe weather episodes, if you will, over the last month or so. We had one not too long after Thanksgiving, one pretty early on into December, and it's another similar setup to what we're dealing with today.
You may almost have 2 circulations splitting into that one in Bienville Parish. I don't know what's
Right.
happening there, but it's
Very
getting
strange.
really funky and not in a good way. That could almost be 2 different twin circulations from the same storm.
It very well could be, and it's, again, not an exact science. It's going to be an analysis of what we see based on radar scan to radar scan. I'm going to head over to Shreveport to see if they can see something different or similar. And Jared, if I just switched over to Shreveport's, and you can still see there could be very well 2 different circulations right there.
All right, here's a new tornado warning that's out for Bienville, Jackson, Lincoln, and Wynn parishes. It's about to pop up on your screen here.
Yep.
Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado 11 miles southwest of Jonesboro. That's a big tornado warning.
It is.
Moving to the northeast at 45 miles per hour. That's going to include Ruston and points east all the way to the Ouachita Parish line. So Ruston, I don't believe this technically includes Grambling, but for folks in Grambling, you've got that other storm that's kind of headed your way. You want to be in your... Anybody on I-20 in Lincoln Parish needs to be in their safe place now.
Right.
Because of the storms that are headed that direction.
And at this point, we want to get people far away from I-20 right now as well. So if you had plans on going somewhere, well, you no longer have plans to go anywhere, especially along I-20, because these storms are headed directly for there. And so maybe there's some folks joining us in the Ruston community as of now. You are getting a well-advanced time notice as of this point because the circulation is well southwest. We are acknowledging it's a very long tornado warning, but given the fact that these circulations are holding themselves together, that's not too surprising as well. And so I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit closer into this other warning here in just a second.
So that first tornado warning, and I know that people are seeing stuff drop off their screen and things like that. The other tornado warning that was allowed to expire at 4:30. That was the first tornado warning. Now we have 2 possible tornado warnings outside of that initial warning moving to the northeast. So again, heed the warnings that are in effect. The latest one goes until 5:15, so we may be here for a second.
Yep, it does look like we're going to continue, and I'm just trying to get a vantage point. You can see where Jonesboro Hodge is, a little bit further southwest. This circulation also hugging the western side of that tornado warning. And I'm going to go ahead and circle that rotation. You can probably circle it yourself, but nonetheless, the reds are the winds moving away from the radar, the greens moving towards the radar. And this is the storm that includes all the way up to southern Lincoln Parish and includes Ruston and I-20 as well. So as I mentioned, it's a pretty wide and long tornado warning for obvious reasons. They haven't really seen much for disruption in terms of our environment. And so that's going to be something that you have to take into account. How is the storm, what's happening in the environment that the storm is moving into? And so if it's relatively disrupted, it's not too surprising to see the tornado potential continue. And Jared, I'm looking at this other tornado warning.
Still kind of hanging out.
It does look to be hanging out just a little bit, and again, maybe we're seeing 2 different areas of rotation. I'm going to do a little bit of a carousel into some different radar moves.
While you look at that for a second, if you guys could join me on the BAM for just a second, and we could take a look at just kind of a quick storm track. Well, as soon as I did that, the storm track disappeared. So take this full for just a second on links 2, and if we could, and that way we can do a new storm track on these storms as this circulation continues to move off to the north and east. If we could take this full in the control room, links 2, if we can take that full screen so I can move back over to the other screen. All right, well, I'm going to leave it anyway. So let's go over to and check out what's going on with what's happening storm track wise. I just wanted to do a quick storm track of this storm as it moves to the north and east at about 45 miles per hour. And again, Jonesboro Hodge and East Hodge, North Hodge, all those areas 447 to about 450. So you've got about 15 minutes or so, but I wouldn't want to take all that time. Get to your safe place if you're in those spots now, Walker.
And thank you very much, Jared. And again, what we're looking at as of this point is 2 different tornado warnings. Both go at different times. The longer of the 2 warnings goes until 5:15. Now, the good news is that what we're seeing just south of Simsboro, south of I-20, and south of Arcadia, I'm not noticing the strengthening of the rotation just yet, so we're going to put this on notice, so to speak, and see if it starts to spin back up.
It looks better on our radar, Walker, and I just switched radar modes, so we're about to get those higher velocities.
Okay, I'll give it a minute and
you're getting the first sweep here in just a second, so just kind of letting you know what's happening with the radar.
All right, we're going to check in on live storm tracker Doppler just a second. Back to this storm just southwest of Jonesboro Hodge. What you're seeing is the Bruton's Mill area, the Pine Ridge area. This is where that possible tornado warning is, just to the southwest of Evergreen. If this looks in any way, shape, or form familiar to you, you need to go ahead and get into your safe place. And this circulation has held itself together for quite some time as of now. This is not the first tornado warning that this circulation has needed. It's the second. We jumped on the air right around 3:40-ish for 2 different tornado warnings, and this one has stuck together for around an hour or so as of this point, or around 30 to 45 minutes. And again, what the environment that it's running into, there's a lot of moist and warm air out ahead of it. There's a favorable wind environment, so we're assuming under all circumstances that these circulations are easily able to hold themselves together. Now, it'd be a different story if we had tons of activity prior to this. Maybe there wouldn't be as much energy to use, but given the time frame, it's around 4:30, so we're still getting a lot of peak heating hours of the day and a little bit something funky on the radar.
Yeah, it's just a bad pass, I think. So, and that's going to happen. We've got a lot of different vantage points from this one, but again, just the big takeaway from it, you may want to switch back over to Fort Polk for a second.
Yeah, I think I'm going to head over to these to our radar, to the ones just south of I-20.
But again, it's Jonesboro Hodge, folks along 167. Once you get from the Wynn-Jackson line all the way to Ruston, everybody from the Wynn-Jackson line along 167 northward all need to be in their safe place now. Again, you still have that other tornado warning to the north and west.
And that's what I'm looking at right here, Jared. And so don't be distracted by this red line right here. This is the other tornado warning. So folks around the Mount Olive region, I think our radar gives a really good vantage point of what we're looking at as of now. And I'm not really seeing that secondary rotation, or that secondary circulation, if you will, but I'm still noticing this one staying fairly strong. We're getting another radar sweep.
Yeah, I can still see that one to the south and west too. It's just not as easy to see. And again, we're going through a lot of messiness with heavy rainfall and things of that nature, but again, it's one of those days where you just have to heed the warnings. You don't want folks to immediately think, okay, because those reds and greens, don't become a junior meteorologist today. Is just if you're under a warning, be in your safe place. It's pretty simple.
Right, and we would be doing the same thing, just absolutely. And you're starting to hear some rumbles of thunder outside the West Monroe studios. Maybe you're hearing that on our ends, but nonetheless, we are expecting strong activity to continue for a good part of the evening. And so this is just really the tip of the iceberg in terms of not just isolated storms, but clusters of storms that we could see develop or move into the area as we head towards late this evening. So maybe you're at work right now, and maybe you're in the I-20 corridor region. Maybe it's maybe not a bad idea to either stay at work or just go ahead and head home and make sure you get in your safe place, have the kids, something of that sort, etc. We get another little scan here, and Jared, it's holding itself together. I'm hoping that
yeah, and the overall structures of both storms are still there too. So again, the latest update from the National Weather Service on the Bienville-Jackson-Lincoln storm is severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado 9 miles northwest of Jonesboro, moving northeast at 30. So it has slowed down a little bit, but again, you're getting a lot of lead time from that area. And again, you can see that little hook, or whatever you want to call it, the little appendage, comma tail that looks like a possible tornado, or where a tornado would form. And again, that's just it's very commonplace this time of year to see these types of structures. Just be in your safe place. Turn up the Facebook live stream. I know we're joining you there. We're in the middle of newscast time on both NBC 10 and Fox 14. We kind of hit the back and forth with all of our different newscasts during this time. So again, Walker, we may be here with you for a while, but we're just kind of keeping an eye on the two storms, and along with that, we're also getting some surface observations from storm chasers and things of that nature of how heavy the rainfall is with some of this stuff. So that's another thing. Don't try to be outside seeing these. Get to your safe place.
Right, especially now. At this point, the sun is going to start to set. Most of the skies are going to stay overcast, so there's really not much sunshine allowing for you to see much of anything regardless. But what Jared's talking about is we talked earlier about the light green is going to be light rainfall, and then it kind of increases to yellow, and then orange, and then dark red. But even some of the purples, that can either be hail, and there is some possibility for the environment and some of these storms to uplift and hold some hail cores, so to speak, but that also could just be extremely heavy rainfall. So regardless of what it is, that's likely impacting visibilities and things of that sort. So staying off the roadways is key here. There's no point into trying to traverse this storm whatsoever, let alone if it had a severe thunderstorm warning or tornado warning anyway. Some very heavy rainfall can easily disrupt traffic.
Your latest two passes, or your latest pass on the National Weather Service and Shreveport radar shows both circulations still pretty strong there, wrapping back up together. The one to the farther south has moved now into southeastern sections of Bienville Parish, so that's why the warnings, again, spread out and get wider with time. So, again, if you're in that area, I'll read off some of those, Walker. They may be tough for you. Pine Grove Road, Evergreen Road, and then Highway 4 again. And then you can see Jonesboro right on the right-hand side of your screen, right behind the hand tracker buttons, and you just took them down. So there they are. There's Jonesboro Hodge, and you can see that circulation moving right to you folks. You've got a 10 or 15-minute lead time. You've had that lead time for a while now. We don't know what this storm's doing, whether it's producing a tornado or not, but it certainly could be, so make sure you're in your safe place.
Absolutely, and now is not the time to make any bad or rash decisions. It's the only time to enact your severe weather plan. That's getting to your safest place possible within your home. And folks within mobile homes, within the Jonesboro Hodge area, that is not going to be a safe place. So you probably have enough time as of now to head to some type of community building, some well-structured building that's going to be able to protect you from the potential tornado, maybe some of the debris around it as well, some of the very heavy winds. And as mentioned, even if it's not producing a tornado, it likely brings very heavy rainfall and potentially damaging wind gusts as well, enough to the point where it may even seem like there is actually a tornado that's moved through the area. So regardless, you just need to be in your safe place no matter what the situation is. And I don't know how the circulation to the north of here is looking now, Jared, but it does look to be somewhat there. Looking.
And on our radar, it's still, it shows that it's there. Moving eventually, we'll be crossing into the northwestern sections of Jackson Parish. It's kind of along the Bienville-Jackson line, and I'm getting a new swipe, and I'm about to look at it again. But yeah, it looks like it's headed right toward the Lincoln-Jackson-Bienville triple point, if you will. You've got it circled there. You can kind of see what I'm talking about. Not as strong and well defined, but still certainly there. Those reds and greens combining together. So again, it's one of those days where these storms are going to kind of come and go in their intensification. They're going to kind of breathe in, breathe out, and so you just kind of have to kind of stick with these warnings and make sure that you remain sheltered.
Right, and so what we're looking at as of this point, I'm just going to leave both of these up here on screen. There is some type of circulation near this original circle. I'm having to look at two different radars to get the best vantage point for this storm and looking at another radar to get the best vantage point for this storm. So just kind of bear with us here, but nonetheless, it's almost the entire span from folks along I-20 just to the few miles east of Shudrint, all the way through Ruston, all the way through Simsboro. That tornado threat's likely going to continue, even though this tornado warning in particular has not been extended to include I-20. We're getting a pretty good vantage point from our radar that this circulation is continuing to hold itself together. So regardless of what continues to happen, you need to make sure that you're in your safe place, and that's from around east of Shudrint all the way through and just to the east of Arcadia. That entire span from areas near I-20 and areas south, that's going to be your best place to get into your safe place. And so, Jared, I think I'm going to try to get some road names out just to the southwest of Jonesboro Hodge here in just a second.
Yeah, and I think your northern edge storm is still rotating.
Right.
It still has a tornado warning with it.
Completely.
But I wouldn't necessarily say that a tornado is necessarily imminent in those spots. So again, just be aware that these storms may kind of come and go. You may even go a stretch without a tornado warning in some of these areas, but then a warning may pop back up. So just kind of be aware of that as well.
And just off first glance, you can obviously still see the reds and the greens currently in place, but that circulation actually might have wandered a little bit more east. And so that's going to be almost directly southwest of Jonesboro Hodge. It's almost directly in the middle of that tornado warning, including Jonesboro Hodge. As of this point, we've been saying it time and time again. So just in case you're within this area and you're just getting to a TV, you're just pulling up the Facebook live stream, something, you need to be in your safe place now. So that is your time to act. You want to get into your safe place. Put as much distance in between you and the outside as possible. People like to wonder what they can bring with them into their safe place. It doesn't really matter. You want to bring some type of padding if you want, some helmet, pillows, blankets, something of the sort, maybe even a mattress if you can bring it there. Shoes is also a good idea as well, because just in case some glass breaks or something of the sort, it helps you protect your feet from the debris. And it's going to continue moving northeast here. Now, this warning goes until 5:15, so the time now only 4:42, so at a minimum, we are looking at this tornado warning and staying on the air for a little over 30 minutes or so. That could continue based on if this circulation continues to hold itself together, and with the new scan here, it does look to be continuing to hold itself. I'm going to look over towards the Fort Polk radar and maybe see something a little bit different.
Yeah, rain starting here at the West Monroe Studios. Nothing severe, no warnings out in Ouachita Parish, but for folks that are hearing the rumbles of thunder under our microphones, know that there is a tornado watch in effect now till 9 p.m. In fact, it was extended to include Ouachita Parish, but again, till 9 p.m. for the vast majority of about the northwestern half of the Arklamas under that tornado watch. Could see another one needed later on tonight. We'll just have to wait and see. Also, a new flash flood warning has just been issued for portions of Bienville, Natchitoches, and Red River parishes. That's the other thing that's going to become an increasing problem with these storms, is they're moving slowly over these same areas over and over and over. So heavy rainfall could be a problem as well.
Right, and that's another factor that not just plays into the severe weather threat, but as Jared was mentioning, the flood threat. We have tons of Gulf moisture that have moved into the area over the last several days. You've likely noticed the fog, some mist that we've seen, and that's really just indicating we are oozing with moisture. And so when these thunderstorms get to utilize that moisture, it aids the severe weather threat, but also just dumps tons of rainfall. Looking at Future Tracker over the last couple of days, when things are all said and done, I would not be surprised to see some areas see 2, maybe 3 inches of rainfall. That's likely going to be in the more isolated instances, but nonetheless, an aerial flood watch is across most of the Arklamas outside of a couple folks right along the Mississippi Valley. So seeing flash flood warnings is not necessarily going to be out of the ordinary or a surprise to us if that happens later this evening. So folks within low-lying areas that are prone to flooding, you know who you are. Just be advised that that's going to be another risk as well. And back towards the tornado warnings, and I just want to briefly mention there's at least some type of weak circulation near Martin. Maybe that develops into something, just keeping an eye on things that are in our area or could potentially move into the area. And the main area of focus is going to continue to be Jonesboro Hodge as this circulation kind of continues to hold itself together. And
yeah, and all of this is again being shrouded in so much heavy rainfall that you're running into issues where, like I said, these circulations are kind of coming and going, and as Walker kind of bounces back and forth, and just looking at that road, I believe that was Antioch Road. I can't nope, I'm sorry, Antwine Road in the Evergreen community, Evergreen Road, and then Highway 4 leading into Jonesboro Hodge. This is a circulation that we're going to kind of err on the side of caution with, A, because we're kind of in no man's land with the warning itself, and B, it's going to move right toward Jonesboro. So for you folks, make sure you stay in your safe place. Obviously, the other tornado warning that went until 4:45 was allowed to expire, so a little bit of good news there. We only have this one tornado warning now in effect in our area.
Right, and so for those folks probably wondering where on the map that is, there's another warning that was just north of here. That one has been canceled. There might be some residual rotation there, but it's not enough to warrant a tornado warning, so no worries there. But folks along the Ruston area, you're still likely included in some type of tornado warning, and that same stretch of I-20 still needs to be put on notice as well. And even if there's not a tornado warning, as mentioned, the heavy rainfall is going to limit visibility almost to a 0 amount, so that could potentially spell huge problems if you're trying to cross I-20. That's why we're saying even if there's a tornado warning or not, the heavy rain is going to obscure a lot of traffic and could potentially cause traffic issues, so do be advised there. I'm going to head back over to reflectivity. Again, we've been looking at the velocity for quite some time, talking about the reds and the greens, things of that sort. We're going to go to live storm tracker Doppler radar. We're getting some weird returns as of now.
Yeah, I think we're hitting a point where we may be hitting a tree or something weird and obscured in that one particular radial, so you may have to bounce to another spot.
Right, and as of now, Jared, I'm not really noticing too much in terms of structure that we can really point out as well. We might just have to stay on the velocity here for a little bit.
The shear rate out of the National Weather Service and Shreveport's radar still shows, if not rotation, at least the pocket of some damaging wind gusts headed toward Jonesboro Hodge. There still could be a tornado kind of shrouded in there somewhere, but certainly still a possibility of some stronger winds translating down to the surface.
Right, and that's what shear, and that's what, if folks at home are not familiar with what shear is, what you're seeing here is some different, of course, different reds and greens, and as mentioned, the reds and greens mean different things depending on what radar product we're looking at, but the shear, it basically takes into account the winds, the wind profile, how they're moving in terms of height, how the winds are changing with height, the speed and the direction, and so nonetheless, that shear is going to try to indicate damaging wind potential, maybe a potential tornado there as well, so just another factor, something else to look at that kind of leads you to believe that there could be some type of rotation or potential tornado. And Jared, this one may have tightened up just a little bit more. And it's just again in such a miserably rough area of heavy rainfall for areas Jonesboro and points southward along 167. Again, I wouldn't take any chances with this. You're already under a warning. Just make sure that you stay in your safe place. I'm checking our radar, which is not really seeing anything either. But again, if you're in Jonesboro Hodge 167, you need to go ahead and take shelter. You've been under a warning for a while now, so you've had plenty of lead time, but that still doesn't look good on radar. Yeah, I would agree, Jared, and I might take another look out here in just a second. That warning was trimmed off just a little bit on the southern edge. Is what you're noticing. That box looks just a little bit differently. But the warning does continue all the way and still does include points south of I-20 and includes Ruston. So, folks, you need to continue to be in your safe place. Now, as of now, this is the only tornado warning we have. That remnant circulation from the other storm is still just west of this tornado warning. So if you're wondering what that is, that was the residual circulation from the other storm that was tornado warned. It potentially could spin back up again. But I'm going to head back over to reflectivity and see just the widespread heavy rainfall that's moving around the area now, too. And a whole plethora. This is a very messy situation, and so I kind of want to point out the fact that because this storm may be being impacted by storms just south of it, it could be trying to disrupt that rotation. It could be. And so that's going to be something that we have to monitor as well. The fact that these things could spin up and try to get going by themselves, and then another storm comes along and then starts to mess with it, and then that circulation starts to fall back apart again. And we're going to get a little bit closer to the Jonesboro Hodge community and see if we can get some more road names.
Yeah, you need to be sheltered if you're in the Jonesboro Hodge area, and again, along 167. Central sections of Jackson Parish, interior portion of your home, away from windows and doors. If you saw the tornado video and pictures from the New Orleans tornado from a couple of weeks ago, you saw a lot of stuff circulate on social media of a 2x4 that went and impaled someone's siding on the outside of their house. And again, it's things like that that remind us to be in interior portions of your home. Put walls between you and the outside, so if that flying debris for some reason does make a target toward your home, that you have some kind of line of defense there. I know it sounds grim, but again, these are the kind of things that's why we say that those types of things, is just to be sheltered and be in your safe place. And that's why you should also think of this stuff far in advance.
Right, and so the debris you don't want to be impacted by, and so trying not to go outside, that's a good idea as well, because even if you're far away from where this tornado might be, say you're in northern portions of Hodge, potentially, and you're trying to look at this, A, that's a bad idea, and B, because some of that debris could still, if there's that potential tornado is there, it could be slinging that debris your direction, and so staying inside and being away from glass, which is obviously prone to shatter, if it comes in contact with some type of debris, I know we have to kind of try to explain the threat so we can actually get people to act, because that's going to be, if we lead them to believe that there's danger, then they'll go into their action plan. And so you're going to have to continue to maintain in your safe place for the Jonesboro and Hodge communities.
Very heavy rainfall through there, Walker.
Extremely. And so as mentioned beforehand, maybe some of that heavy rain is hail. Maybe you're hearing some tinks, so to speak, some heavier pitter-patter, potentially with some hail. That potential is still going to be there as well. Maybe not necessarily severe hail, but nonetheless hail. And that circulation is still maintaining.
and has now crossed 167. So now it is passed kind of to the south of town. There's still a weak area of rotation right through Jonesboro Hodge. So if you hear that and you think you're in the clear in Jonesboro Hodge, stay sheltered. You're still under a tornado warning. We're not announcing any kind of all clears or anything like
Absolutely
that.
not.
So again, that looks to be the strongest area of rotation, but there's still a spot back to the north along 167 that doesn't look great either.
Right, and so even though, you can really just disregard my circles most of the time, I'm just trying to get, a rough idea for some folks of where that potential tornado would be. But nonetheless, there's a reason why that we talk about severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings. The warnings are what determines your action, not the circles or not where we think the rotations might be. The tornado warnings is what you base your actions off of. And nonetheless, the heavy rainfall is going to continue in this entire stretch. So even if there's not something there, that heavy rainfall continues and likely is expected to continue, just utilizing the plethora of moisture that's around the area. And as of this point, this is the only storm that we're looking at, Jared.
Yeah, I'm still seeing an area east of Jonesboro Hodge that may be a little bit stronger. But again, we're kind of in that weird radar spot south of, no pun intended, but Walker Road.
Right.
East Main Street, which is Highway 4 going out of Jonesboro. There's an area kind of south of there, which is exactly where you are.
Right.
But we're looking at it from two different radar vantage points. But again, that looks to be the spot that if there was a tornado imminent, that would probably be it.
And even if say there's a broad rotation, right? It looks over a pretty big area, and then say that tornado picks up and then puts it down somewhere else, and then picks it up and then puts it somewhere else again. So it's not out of the ordinary to see the specific area that might have a tornado kind of migrate erratically. That's going to be pretty typical for just these kinds of storms and tornadoes in general. So as Jared mentioned, right around the Walker Road area, just to the west of Spring Hill, and just to the southwest of Weston, and just south of Jonesboro, this is that area of potential rotation. And it looks pretty well defined. I don't know if we can see a decent vantage point from our radar, Jared. Have you seen that?
It's about the same.
Okay.
We're still kind of in that weird radial where it's kind of tough to see. But also keep in mind that these circulations spin up quickly, spin down quickly, so they can breathe in and out. We talked about that. In fact, we watched a storm earlier today in Union Parish. You talked about it earlier, the one that caused the damage near the Norfolk community. That may have been the first tornado of 2023 anywhere in the country. And again, it could have been something that pulsed up very, very quickly, kind of within scans. If you go back over to our radar right now, Walker, I think you'll see exactly the storm structure in just the normal reflectivities mode. You can see that area now just east of Main Street, your same circled area, right there on Main Street, which is Highway 4, kind of between Jonesboro and Weston. That's where our possible tornado would be.
Right, you can almost try to get that structure of what's going on right here. Maybe that's where it is, maybe not, but nonetheless, you can see plenty of heavy rain still around the Walker Road community through Jonesboro. So even if you're still there, you need to maintain in your safe place. That heavy rainfall is still obstructing any views likely on the road. And
very strong winds north of Hodge, too. In that area of Reds and Rockfield and Hodge that you see just north of town, radar still indicates some pretty strong winds, at least aloft. So while it may not be producing a tornado in those areas, maybe some 60 or 70 mile an hour wind gusts embedded in there, too.
And just for the record, for people that may be wondering, so what happens is you have some really strong winds up high in the atmosphere, and if they get mixed down to the surface, that's what causes those damaging wind gusts. So the fast winds are already happening above you most of the time. It just depends on if it gets mixed down to the surface where you are, and so that's why it's like if you're under a severe thunderstorm warning, you need to be in your safe place as well as a tornado warning. But we're looking at live storm tracker Doppler radar. It's a little bit more messy, but nonetheless, I'm still noticing the rotation right along that area.
9 Pines Road, I'm reading them out for you, Walker. 9 Pines Road, and then Highway 4. It's moving generally just now north of Highway 4, or right along Highway 4. Garner Road, I think that's 542 that moves northeast out of Jonesboro. So and then you can see the Hebron communities. Winfield Road on the top right-hand side, yes, that is State Highway 542 that moves northeast out of Jonesboro Hodge. So this possible tornado is kind of sandwiched between 4 and 542 at this point.
Right, and so I think clearly that this circulation has tightened up just a little bit.
Yep.
Because I've been looking at 3 different radars. I was looking at Fort Polk, Shreveport, and ours, and I've looked at Shreveport's a couple different times now, and it does look to be a little bit stronger. Jared, do you have any information on that?
Nope, I just wanted to agree with you there, because I think we're looking at the possibility of this circulation, which is now past Route 18 between Jonesboro and Weston, moving northeastward. It will head toward the Vernon community, but yeah, I just wanted to kind of confirm with you that this rotation, this area looks like it is getting stronger as opposed to getting weaker.
And as I mentioned beforehand, there's a reason why that these tornado warnings are so wide, because I mentioned just a little while ago, give or take about 15 to 20 minutes, this circulation was on the west side of that warning, and it's now migrated a little bit east, so that's why they're so wide.
May have a tornado debris signature on it too, Walker. I'm going to...
okay, can you pop that up?
In fact, if we can pop over to links 2 over here on the BAM, I'll join you on the wall for just a second, so we don't have to... I'll let you stay on the rotation part of this, but let's take a look at this one little small dot, and again, may or may not, it may be hail that's causing something weird, but for it to be so perfect within the circulation of the storm itself, this is Highway 4, but this little area right here usually would indicate the possibility of a tornado debris signature. So we may have a tornado confirmed on the ground. We'll continue to keep an eye on that, but I just wanted to pull this one radar product up. Walker's been continuing to keep an eye on the areas of rotation and kind of getting you road by road there, and now you can see with the latest radar image. Now I definitely think we're going to get to that. So Walker, I'll let you sit. We'll go back over to you and let Walker continue to track these storms, and I'll continue to keep an eye on the latest information.
Right, and even with the next radar, that is clearly pulsed up just a little bit more, so just for reference, when you see a brighter color green or a brighter color red, that means the winds are all the faster, which means that circulation might be a little bit stronger. And so just from the last scan, it's pulsed up a good amount in terms of coloring.
Reporting trees down now on the Northeast Louisiana Skywarn Network is reporting trees down on Walker Road in Jonesboro. We just called that area out, and now a confirmed tornado, an observed tornado, confirmed large and extremely dangerous tornado near Jonesboro, moving northeast at 45 miles per hour. So now this is confirmed on the ground, north and east of Jonesboro. North of Highway 4, moving northeast. And again, if you're within this warning, confirmed tornado, take shelter now.
Right, now we're not necessarily messing around, so to speak. It is imperative for you to get into your safe place, regardless of what you're doing. Drop what you're doing and get into your safe place. Folks around the Hebron community, make phone calls to whoever you have to in this area. It's just to the south and east of the Pumpkin